Hey friend, welcome into a fiction-focused bonus episode with my very best friends, Lisa Wood and Maria Jessup, and our special guest, best-selling author of Christian romantic suspense novels, Dani Pettrey. This is a book that both Lisa and Maria loved. I loved it too, but they both loved it, and they're so different in the way they read books. Lisa says it isn't a good book unless someone gets murdered, and Maria wants things wrapped up nicely with a bow in the romance department, that is. And both of my friends got exactly what they wanted from this book. The mystery was good, the love story was good, and you know what else was good? Getting to spend time with Dani Pettrey. She's a wonderful author and just a lot of fun to talk with. In the time we had with her, we talked about one of her earliest novels, Submerged. It's a story of making mistakes, changing because of the grace of Jesus, and then learning to trust that the old is gone and the new has come, as we are promised in 2 Corinthians 5:17. I know you're going to love listening to Dani talk about researching books, what writing in the Christian genre means to her, and why it was important to her to write a story about forgiveness. Forgiveness for others and forgiveness for ourselves. Let's listen in. Good evening, Steady On community. Welcome to Virtual Book Club. It's our summer edition of Virtual Book Club. Ladies, how long have we been doing this now? This is like year 3 or something. And we get this opportunity, this super fun opportunity to invite some authors on to talk about their works. And tonight we're with Dani Pettrey. Dani, welcome to Steady On community.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we are thrilled. We're thrilled to talk about this book and some of your other books too, but we read Submerged. And Maria actually has, a lot of times Maria holds up her Kindle or something. But tonight we all have our copies. I know. Yeah. So it's just fantastic. We loved this book. I loved it. Lisa read it. Maria read it. Did you read it? I listened to it actually. I'm more of a listener, but yeah, we just loved it. And I have so many things that I want to ask you about it, but let's just start us off. If someone is like, hey, what's your book about, Dani? How do you describe the concept or the storyline of Submerged?
Sure. So Submerged is about Bailey Craig, who is a professor of Russian Alaskan history, and she loses a loved one and has to go back to the town that she vowed she'd never return to. And Cole McKenna is the patriarch of his family since his parents passed away. There's 5 siblings in the family, and they own an adventure outfitting company. And he is a cave diver, and there is trouble in town. There are dark secrets, and he's more afraid of the woman who broke his heart coming back to town than he is of the mystery.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I love that. And I like some of the things that you were saying is like, it leads me right into my second question. But what did you guys think, Lisa and Maria? What did you guys think just about like the storyline and what just grabbed you? Either one of you, something that grabbed you right away?
The whole Alaska Russian thing I knew nothing about. And I'm like, okay, this person that wrote this is really smart. She knows a lot of stuff. and I trying to follow it. But here's the thing. It made me want to learn more about it, which is what I love about historical kind of fiction things, like, oh, I need to learn about that because that really happened. And I thought you did a fabulous job with that. And that I really liked that part.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. How about you, Maria? Something stand up. It's okay if we listen to Raven. That's Raven barking in the background. No sorries. Yeah, this is real life.
Yeah, right. No, too. The aspect of historical fiction was just a really pleasant surprise. I too enjoyed that. I'm like, with Lisa, I'm like, oh, I got to learn more about this. And as the story unfolded, you did a great job of helping us unfold that and creating that interest. Yeah. And Russian, I don't even know.
I didn't know that at all, because when you started talking about the Russian Alaskan stuff, I'm like, I would guess that means there were a lot of Russian people that went to Alaska. I didn't even know that.
I mean,
I see it from your house.
Yeah.
Right? You can.
That's so great. So those of you who are watching lives, thank you so much. We're so glad you're here. If you have questions for Dani about anything, well, mostly anything, put them in the comments there and I'll relay them to her. But here's one of the things that I'm always so curious, especially with people who write historical fiction, because I think it's so daunting, Dani. Like, I really do, because I'm like, okay, whatever you're writing about, there are things, even if you know a lot about something, you need to add some other things you don't know as much about. But here's the thing, somebody knows a lot about everything, right? And so you want to get it as right as you can.
Yes.
So I wrote down a few things that you had to know about to write this. And I'm curious, what did you already know about? But Alaskan Russian history, we talked about that. Scuba diving. I thought that was like underwater archaeology. I don't even know if that's a thing, but that was in the book. So yeah, it was a thing. Running small businesses. I mean, police work, forensics, Russian royalty, Alaska in general. I mean, those are just some of the things that, for me, I'm like, well, you have to know about this and this and that. So what did you already know about, and what was like maybe challenging that you're like, I'm going to have to figure this out?
Yes. So I would say the one thing I knew about was not a lot, but was scuba diving. I've been scuba diving. My husband is a master diver, so he was my inside source for that. I did not know a whole lot about Alaska. I'd always wanted to visit, but I still have not made it there. But I was fascinated by it, and I started doing research on it. I love research, and I was a classics major in college and took some archaeology, and I loved anything history. So I love research. I kind of have to force myself to stop and write the book, but I was just started on Alaska in general. And Russian Alaskan history came up, and I was like, "Oh, that's intriguing." And that's how my brain went that way. And I just started researching it. I found some great books written by people in Alaska, Russian Alaskan ancestry, who wrote books, and I read those books. And for police work, I talked with a good friend who's a police officer, and he talked with the forensics lab for me. So a lot of people helped me out, and a lot of reading was involved for sure, but I love that. So, yeah, the Russian Alaska history, I honestly didn't think about or know about, and I was so drawn in by that. I spent so much time on that, probably way more than I was supposed to. I needed to get writing, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
What kind of time does it take, maybe in general, or for this book, to like kind of put the research together to add those details? Because really, in my mind, tell me if I'm right, you have like this, what the story is going to do, but you got to do these research to make the story come to life in its surroundings, right? So how much time does that take?
Well, it's interesting. The one thing I didn't know about when I was starting with the story was the Russian Alaskan history, how it comes into the story. That was a last minute kind of addition because I fell in love with that research. And so I basically changed the story to go with the research. But normally I research up front. I have an idea for the story, and I will spend probably a month researching it. Then I write my first draft, and I'll put in places where research this, look this up, research this, like in brackets. And then I'll do another round of research, a week or two to go through what I realized I still didn't know. And even in the final draft, sometimes I'm looking things up. It's just, there's so many things, like you said, either I have to talk to somebody who knows it really well, or I have to study to know it really well. And I'm often talking with people, experts in different areas, which has been such a joy. People are so willing to help. It's amazing.
I think that's great. Yeah. I wonder too, like how I write sermons and like talks. And so it's different, but sometimes I like want to bring in an illustration and I think, and I'm like, well, I want to get it right. So I'm looking at news articles, or I'm looking at this, or I'm looking at that. And it may be for like one or two sentences, but it's really important that those facts are accurate. So
everything has to be accurate.
Right. To the best of your ability. I love it. Or sometimes an author will put, these people have helped me. Any mistakes are mine. You say, right? Like, because you're like,
do that. I'm like, this and this and this and this person all helped, but if I messed it up, I'm sorry.
It's not because they didn't tell me right. Yeah, Maria, did you have something you were going to add to that?
Well, Lisa too, but it is, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but so the Russian royalty, were they fiction or nonfiction? I mean, were they like actual royalty?
Yes, they were actual people, without giving any spoilers.
Right.
The one person was somebody that what supposedly happened to that person, supposedly it did happen to an extent, but I took it from a certain point and then made it fiction. with that
Cool.
particular person. But
Yeah.
like the legends about that person and all of that are true. And then I took a certain part and I went, ooh, what if this happens? And then I ran with it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, were you going to add something
Yeah,
too?
I was just, when you were talking about the authenticity or, having to, some things you knew and some you didn't. I also know how to scuba dive, and I'm also very claustrophobic. So it was a huge thing for me to be able to do this, right? But I will tell you that when you were doing the cave thing, my heart was racing and I was creeping out the whole time because I knew there's no way I could do that. And I knew what that would feel like. So if you're wondering about the authenticity of that, yes, I felt it.
Okay, that's good to know. Yes, I could never do cave diving. I can't do wreck diving or cave diving. I'm like, no.
I just want to see the fish.
Yes, exactly. I like nice light water and fish. It's
Same.
good.
Yep.
Yes.
So it was really well, described in the book. Felt very real.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good to hear, right?
Yeah. And I'm thinking like, I just keep thinking of more plane, like a plane crash and like ER, like EMT, like first responder kind of stuff. Like I just keep thinking of other things that were like, there's a lot of thing. I mean, there's a lot in all, but I just thought I just kept thinking, oh, there's that and there's that, and just a lot of different things which made the book feel very real. I could imagine myself there because it felt like it all made sense, like it was accurate in that, like, this is how a small town would operate. This person knows this and this person knows this. I loved it. Yeah. So good. I want to change direction a little bit though, and talk about Bailey, the main character. Because you mentioned like she returned to Yancey because of a loved one's passing, but she didn't really want to do that because of past mistakes. And she was, even though she was a Christian from the beginning of the book, that there was this heavy weight of shame and regret, something that I can relate to very much. And this lie that she believed that she wasn't worth loving, I think. I mean, that's what I felt like she was believing. And so I'm just wondering, like, I think there was this strong message about how we're a new creation, but what are you hoping to communicate that, through her character and in the book about the love of Jesus?
Yes. So, actually I based Bailey, not necessarily her present day, but kind of her past and her struggles off of myself and mistakes I made when I was younger before I came to Christ. And when I first came to Christ, and even sometimes still, that's something, I think when you have struggles like that and mistakes in your past, they can weigh heavy on you. And it's a lot of times it's easier to forgive somebody else than it is to forgive yourself or to accept Christ's forgiveness for yourself. And I think, it took a long time to finally do that, and it brought a lot of freedom. And so I was hoping to just convey that, people are real, they have struggles, they make mistakes, and that Jesus loves us and makes us new creations, and that our sins are as far as the east is from the west, and that he doesn't want us to live with that burden. He came to set us free from that burden, and there's nobody beyond his love. And I wanted readers, particularly anybody who struggled with past, or even if that past was last month or if it was years ago, just to know the freedom we have in Christ and that you don't have to live with that burden. And I was hoping really through Bailey's story to convey that.
Yeah, I think you did. I think it was a beautiful way that you did it. And I thought it was interesting and brave too, and I don't want to give too much away, but a lot of Bailey's regrets was over her sexual history.
Yes.
And I thought that was really brave, Dani, because I think that's something that a lot of people, that is very real. It's a very real obstacle in their relationship with Jesus and other people and what they think they're worth. And to just kind of tackle that the way that you did. And I thought it was very good. I really did. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I think you mentioned this was your first book. And so I thought that was just really, really brave. I just keep using that word because I thought it was really brave. And I thought it was important too, that one of the reasons she didn't want to go back to that town is because of what people would think of her.
Yes.
And some of the people did think that of her.
Yes.
And they made it very clear that actually we know who you are. And it reinforced, it's how the enemy, whatever the situation, isn't that how the enemy, like that he, like anything that somebody says, or even that we perceive somebody says, will just reinforce that actually, yes, don't forget, you're not
Right.
worth loving. Don't forget you are soiled. Don't forget you are your
Yes.
mistakes or whatever. Yeah. So
Right. No,
yeah.
that's it. He
Mhm,
whispers
mhm,
those lies, you know, and
mhm,
gets us to try to believe that.
mhm,
So
mhm.
absolutely
Yeah. Yeah.
agree.
What about you ladies? Anything about Bailey or other characters that you're like, oh, I want to point this out though?
Well, I like Cole because,
Well, yeah, because he was
because,
like Jesus. Yeah.
yes.
And he was
We like
handsome,
that.
even though we didn't see him, but I knew he was.
It was kind of like,
Handsome.
it was kind of like Hosea. No, I'm not letting you go. It was
Yeah.
That's
Hosea.
exactly what
Yeah.
I thought too. The Hosea story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So good. So good. I like to, I didn't pose this question to you ahead of time, but I like to
Sure.
ask it all the time when I can, when I have a chance to ask a Christian author,
Mhm.
what do you think in this day? I think what makes a Christian novel Christian is
Mhm.
hard to pinpoint sometimes. And I always say this, like I have our author friends that they'll release something in the Christian genre, right? And somebody will leave a review. There's too much Jesus in this. And
Yes.
this of the same book, somebody else will leave a review. There's not enough Jesus in this.
Yeah.
And so as you're writing, what's the right amount of Jesus or gospel or however you want to, how do you figure that out for yourself?
For me personally, I think that varies for everybody, but and I agree, you can have this two different reviews,
I know.
exactly like you said. And you know, for me, I don't set out with a faith thread in mind or a theme in mind. I just set out with the characters. And if somebody has, let's say, a struggle from their past, I'll know that. But I don't kind of start out with, oh, this is about forgiveness or this is about this in particular. I will just know a little bit about my characters and I'll start writing the story. And then by the end of the first draft, I can look at it and go, oh, it's about forgiveness or, oh, it's about this. And I think for me, it's not having that intentionality of my own thinking of what I want it to be. I'm going to sit down and I'm asking God to lead me through the story. And I feel like it comes out how he wants it to come out. And so I don't try to hit a certain level or, you know, not go below a certain level. I just try to let him direct the writing. And then I feel like it comes out how he wanted it to come out and touch who he wants to touch. Because I think it's hard to kind of quantify that. I think, you know what I mean?
I do.
And I think books kind of have that range, even without the reviews. Like some are more heavy on the faith element and some are lower on the faith element. And I think they're both beautiful because that's how God had those stories told. And some people need and really learn from the heavy faith element, and other people need it more subtle. And so I think, you know, it needs to reach different people where they are. And I think having that variety of faith levels is really good. But determining what makes a book Christian, I think, is Jesus. You know, I mean, I think if there's no Jesus specifically in the book, it can still be glorifying to God. Like Esther, God is not mentioned. It's still glorified to God. It's still a story that reflects God. So I think there are stories like that can be thematic and that can glorify him. But there has to be, you know, something in there that glorifies God and that reflects Jesus. So if it's filled with hope or it's filled with forgiveness or if it's filled with, you know, redemption, I think that's what makes it.
I love that. Thank you for that answer. Yeah, I
welcome.
love that. Yeah, I think that I think like a spectrum, or what's the word I'm talking, like a continuum or something, like it is true. And I think people do need different things sometimes because where we are in our faith journey, but sometimes just where we are in our like mood or something. Like I just like sometimes I just want a story that's God honoring. Yes. I don't know if I'm saying that very well.
No,
but I think
you're right. I was trying to think of the word too. Spectrum's a good word.
Right. Yeah. Where is that on the spectrum? I think one of the things for me, this is my hypothesis. I'm interested in what you ladies think. I think one of the things that makes a book a God glorifying book, I think that, or
Mhm.
God honoring book, is if the relationships are honoring.
Yes.
Like, because I think,
Mhm.
like,
Yes.
because I used to be in a secular book club and I didn't hate it at all. And I read stuff that I wouldn't normally read, and I found some treasures, and I I liked it. But one of the things that I like, some of the fiction work that I'm like, why don't I like this or something? And I'm like, because Christian people are called to not treat each other this way, like the way they were in the book.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, and I don't like these people.
Oh,
And it's hard for me,
interesting.
and I'm like that. It took me a while to kind of figure that out. But for me, I'm like, oh, I don't need the book to be like dripping with like gospel or scripture or
Mhm.
something like all the time. But if the relationships aren't honoring, then I can't like root for you or something,
Mhm.
like, so that, I don't know. What do you guys think about
Yeah.
what you're looking for in a book, whether it's like Christian or not? You know what I mean?
That's a
Like,
big question.
is it too
Go ahead,
big?
Maria.
Okay.
Go. No,
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 but
no. Go.
no,
No, go ahead.
I appreciate the way you just
Yeah.
worded that, because
Yeah.
so there are some secular books that as I read it, I just feel icky, and it's
Yep.
not anything
Yeah.
blatant on their end either. Just
Mm-hmm.
it's not sitting right, and
Mm-hmm.
and it could be relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really stopped it.
That's
There
my
have been a couple
hypothesis
I've
for
like
myself. I'm
I
still
knew
kind of
where it
testing
was,
it,
but
but I'm
yeah.
like, I think this is what it is. Yeah.
Mhm,
Hmm.
mhm,
Yeah. So
But I've read the
interesting.
spectrum and appreciate the spectrum too.
I do
Depends on your
too.
mood.
Yeah.
That's a good
Hmm. Yep.
point.
Yep.
So,
I've read all kinds of things. So you
mhm.
said when you get done with the book that you're like, oh, I can tell this one is about this or this. Is this book
Mhm.
about forgiveness? Is this book about
Yes.
redemption? Yeah.
It's about
Forgiveness.
forgiveness and redemption. I feel
Yeah.
like those are kind of themes that I've noticed throughout my books, that I kind of restoration, redemption,
Hmm.
forgiveness,
Yeah.
hope. Those are
Yeah.
kind of the ones that I see repeated
Hmm.
in my books.
Hmm.
So sometimes I think it's what God wants people to hear, and other times I think God's just trying to get me to learn that lesson, and it has to repeat over and over in different
Oh,
books
Mhm.
for me to
Mhm.
finally go,
absolutely.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So
I
Yeah.
think so many of us that write what we need to learn, like, or,
right.
or write, I heard somebody say at one point, I write Bible studies, not fiction, but like write to yourself 10 years ago, write what you needed to know when you didn't know it. And now you
Right.
know it. And, and so, and I'm like, I
That's
think
a
that's really
great
good.
way.
I do.
That's a
Yeah.
great way. I
Yeah.
like
I think
that.
that we do
Wow.
that almost like when the Lord calls us to doing
Right.
something, he's like, now that you've had some time to process this lesson,
Right.
right? Then let's get it
Right.
out. And we do that in different ways. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. So talk to me about what God's doing in your life now. Like, what I know,
Mm.
you're at a writer's retreat. First of all, thank you for
Yes.
taking a little time for us while you're
Of
doing that. So
course.
you're working on something, but I know you have
Yes.
newer things than this. What do you want to
Mhm.
talk about that's out right now, or what you're working on?
Sure. So I have a novella out, The Shifting Current, that I wrote, and it's about a couple that was in my Coastal Guardian series. And it's really cool kind of how it came about, because the series was 3 books and I had already signed a new 4-book series, and I was wrapping up, and I kept saying to my editor, I really want to tell this couple story.
Mhm.
Well, readers wanted it, and I got so many emails that I was able to convince my editor to let me do a novella for this couple, Emmy and Logan. And so The Shifting Current is their story. It can be read as a standalone because um, something happens in Logan's life and he has to return home. And Emmy goes with him to help solve this case that he has to work. And it's set in a different location, and it's just the two of them. So it works as a standalone, or if you've read the Coastal Guardian series and you've met Emmy and Logan, you kind of get to see the end of their story together. But it was really fun, and it was fun. I set it in New Mexico, where I lived for 7 years. I met my husband and I are from the East Coast. Grew up about an hour apart, but we met in New Mexico, of all places, and got married, and we ended up moving back east. But I love New Mexico, so I wrote the book in New Mexico. And then that inspired my new series, which is Jeopardy Falls, which is launching in February. And the whole thing's set in New Mexico. So
Neat.
this Shifting Current ended up being kind of a bridge book between my two series,
Neat.
based on location and based on the couple. So
Yeah. For those of
yeah.
you watching, I dropped the Shifting Current and Dani's website in the comments right there. So
Oh,
those are
thank
there.
you.
Those are there for you. When you write a series, do you know it's going to be a series when you start? Is
Yes.
it like you? Yeah. So are you working with? Because I know, like you did, it's just so gorgeous the way you did it. Because like I know Lisa's already started the second book in this
Oh,
series,
cool.
Oh yeah.
because you're like, oh, Well, now
got
I need
that.
to know.
I need to
about
know.
this.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
reading all of them. So,
But the first one is the first one sort of like, or is the first one you just need the second one, and then the second one you need the third one, or how do you decide that?
Yes. So when I start, I kind of think, oh, okay, I'm going to have 5 books in Alaskan Courage, 5 siblings. And I start with the first one and I think, oh, this will be the second. And then I start writing the first and it's not at all what I thought. So the second's Piper's story. I thought Piper was going to be the last story, but Piper just, for me, came alive. Her and Landon came alive in the book for me. So I was like, okay, second book is their story. And then, it just kind of goes from there. I guess when I get to the next book, I'm like, oh, this will be the next book, that type of thing. So I have an idea and it ends up being completely different when I get to it.
I'll be
So
curious to get to the black sheep brother. I forget his name. But
yeah, we don't know anything about him, but I bet
No,
that's
we
a good
don't.
one. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think you'll know what I mean when I ask this, but I'm just curious because of the way you were just saying that. When you write, are you a planner or a pantser?
Pantser.
Yeah. So tell us if someone's listening and they don't know what that means, tell us the difference.
So
Yeah.
it's somebody who does not plot out a book. So basically I have a premise, a general what if idea, and I'll usually know my characters, like their name and what their job is and where they live. And then I just sit down and write and then just see where the story goes. It means a lot of drafts, to be honest. Sometimes I wish I was a plotter because it would probably save me a lot of drafts, but it's just the way God made me. So
I said planner, but it's plotter, isn't it? Yeah, plotter or pantser.
or
Yes,
planner, but plotter plans the book out. So either way, it goes either way.
Yeah.
But
And
yes,
a pantser writes by the seat of her pants, right?
Pants.
Right.
with the pants, that's it. Yep.
It's funny because some authors will tell us, my character surprised me. I didn't know she was going to do that or whatever. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that happens. Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. Maria, were you going to add something? Oh, I thought you were. Okay. All right. Well, I'm watching the time and our time is about up and I don't see any specific questions. I did drop those things in the comments. And Dani, thank you so much for joining us. Dani can be found at danipettrey.com. And this book is Submerged. And the fall series is, tell us one more time.
The false
for the
Jeopardy
fall. Did you say it was
February?
Jeopardy Falls? Oh, it's for
Falls.
February. Falls. I was
Yeah.
thinking falls. I got it. It's
You
in
got
the
it.
It's
Yes,
in the
you
link.
did.
It is right in the link. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining
you're
us tonight. It's been a
welcome.
joy to visit with you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, friends, for watching. Until next time, peace. Thanks, as always, to my dear friends for reading and chatting with me again for another virtual book club edition. And a huge thank you to Dani for her story and her time. Dani's books are available wherever books are sold. This book was Submerged, and her most recent novella, released this past May, is The Shifting Current. If you haven't yet, I'd be so grateful if you would follow the podcast on whatever directory you are using to listen. It only takes a second, and it guarantees you'll see new episodes, including these fiction-focused bonus episodes, as soon as they drop. And if someone came to mind as you were listening today, I would love if you would share this episode with them. Inviting them into what we're doing here is another great way to support the show. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you're walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.